All right, gentlemen. So we're gonna welcome Mr. Bobby Height. Me and Bobby go way back. We went to Morehouse College together, and just like I always talk to y'all about, the relationships that you build, the friends that you have on the team. You never know where they're gonna end up in life. Me and Mr. Height, we partied together, chased chicks together, played a little flag football together. Did a little bit of everything. Still see him every year when we go back to Morehouse for homecoming. So I mean, we just friends and got to talking. And actually, I think you came to Kansas City is when I really realized what you did. Came to Kansas City for the one of the NCAA tournaments.
It's the Big 12 tournament.
Big 12 tournament, yeah, Big 12
Yep,
tournament. That's
Big 12
he
tournament.
came he came for work. That's just a part of his job. So I'm gonna let him tell you his story about his careers in sports. But we're gonna start out with Bobby. When did you first fall in love with sports, and how did it lead to where you are now?
Um, Honestly, I fell in love with sports as long as I can remember, and the reason why I say that is everybody in my family has played sports, coached sports. So I grew up in a sports family. Um, my father is actually I don't know if you guys can see it. This is an image of him. He uh, he played for the New York Yankees organization back in the 60s.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, so he played back in the 60s. My mom, she played in high school and as a youth, and she also coached a little bit. My sister, she played softball and basketball. She actually played basketball on scholarship at North Carolina Central. So I essentially grew up in a sports family. So all of my life, I had a love for sports, starting out young, but I was one of those odd kids or strange kids, I would say, that I always viewed sports as a vehicle to get me where I wanted to go. I didn't necessarily have the dreams of playing professionally. Honestly, I was realistic with myself. I was a good athlete, but I knew that you have to be an elite athlete to be able to excel on a professional level. But I still wanted to be in a position to have an impact and involvement with sports in all my life.
What did you play at Morehouse?
So I played football at Morehouse. I played football at Morehouse from 1996 to 2000. I know that none of y'all were born at that time. Um, but growing up, I played everything. I played baseball, I played basketball, and I played football. And honestly, football was basketball was my first love. But I say that in a sense to where, like I said, we were always playing baseball, basketball, football all year round, whether it was AAU basketball, travel baseball, football. It was always something that would keep us active and keep us competitive.
So when you say you always knew that you probably just wanted to do something in sports, what did you major in college, and did that help what you do? People say that you got to go to law school to be a sports agent. What all does that mean?
Actually, that's a great question. Like I said, I was one of these kids when I was your age. I was always you guys' age, I was always kind of researching, what are the kind of the business aspects of sports? What are some other aspects that I could kind of have an impact in sports, as opposed to being a professional athlete? So I always had this interest in being a sports agent. And I still have this development plan. And just to show you guys, I actually put this together when I was, I think, a junior in high school, because this was going to be my plan that I was going to be a sports agent, start my own sports agency, and I was going to be an agent in football. Um,
Mm.
and taking a step back, like I said, all my parents played sports, strong in education, things like that. And everybody in my family went to HBCU school. My mother and my father went to Shaw University in Raleigh, and my sister went to North Carolina Central. And I say that in a sense to where I always knew that I wanted to go to HBCU, and I always wanted to go to Morehouse. And the reason why I wanted to go to Morehouse, and I'm dating myself because I know none of you guys have ever heard of this movie before, but the movie School Days. The movie School Days, that really attracted me to go to Morehouse. And there's a reason why I'm wearing this sweatshirt. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it says Morehouse changed my life. And it really did, in a sense, to all of the relationships that Coach talked about that I was able to cultivate. So I say that to where I always wanted to go to Morehouse, and I majored in business management and marketing because at the time Morehouse didn't have anything in sports business at all. But I knew I needed to have that business background in order to get where I wanted to go in order to be a sports agent. One of the myths out there is in order to be a sports agent, you have to go to law school. That's not true because most of sports agencies nowadays actually have attorneys in-house to where in my role, I negotiate the contracts. I know I'm kind of jumping around, but I negotiate the contracts and things like that. And then essentially I hand over the contract to our attorneys to look over the legal language, but I'm still aware and have some type of knowledge of some of the language and things that's going on in the contract. But that's a myth that I get a lot of times from college students, just thinking that they have to not only go to school to get an undergraduate degree, but go to law school to get their law degree in order to be an agent, which is not necessarily true.
So Bobby, some of the kids, we got some kids that want to be, in sports medicine, some that want to be entrepreneurs, some that want to be in marketing, some that want to do video, YouTube stuff. So it's all over the board. Can you explain that how all of those things, kind of based on our prior conversation, how all of those skills are needed at a sports agency and just what a sports agency does?
And that's a great kind of segue. One of the things I would tell you guys is whenever you go to a game, whether if it's college, professional, things like that, just pay attention to your surroundings. And what I mean by that is pay attention to everything from what you will see on the scoreboard, on the jumbotrons, what the people are doing, sitting at the scores tables or the dugouts or whatever it may be. Because all of those people have an impact in sports, but they don't necessarily have to be an athlete in order to do that. They don't necessarily have to have a degree in sports management or sports marketing in order to do those things. Where I work at, we have over 200 employees, and I would say majority of them, they can't tell you, who's the starting pitcher in the rotation for the Kansas City Royals. They can't tell you, who won the NBA championship this past year, but they have an impact in sports entertainment because of the things that they do. So some of my coworkers have degrees in engineering. Some of them have it in media production. Some of them have it in mathematics and analytics. Some of them have it in marketing. Some of them have it in English, because even certain things, like if you go to say a grocery store or prime example, if you see a LeBron James doing a television commercial for Nike, somebody had to write the things that he's reading and he's saying. And so that's usually somebody from a PR standpoint. And so, like, for example, we have a PR division. That's all they do is they write content for whether if it's commercials, video spots, things that you would see on packaging in stores, whatever it may be. Those are different avenues that you can take in order to have an impact on sports and entertainment.
Well, what about, you were telling me something about Spice Adams? Why would he need a sports agent? He's just an Instagram, YouTube type dude.
Are you guys, how many of you guys are familiar with Spice Adams on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and things like that?
I am, Coach. Big Bears guy.
So prime example is Spice Adams. A lot of people don't even realize that he played in the NFL. He played for the Bears. He also played for 49ers and I think another other team too. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he actually, upon his retirement, he actually made a bigger name of himself just creating video content. And a lot of the video content that he created is things that you guys are experiencing. And what I mean by that is one of the characters that he created is Coach Dun Dun. And what he's doing is he's emulating how his coaches used to act. So I'm sure you guys, you probably won't say it because coach is on here right now, but I'm sure you guys do a lot of mimicking or things that coach does around you guys. And so that's one of the things that Spice has done. He's also done things that, how different type of athletes get ready in the locker room. Is it the guy who listens to the headphones? Is it the guy who's worried about, how his uniform feels? Is it the guy who's motivating as fake motivation? And the reason why I bring all that is what he did is he through his social media platforms, he's created an audience to where people now are flocking to his Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, in order to see what he's going to do next, because a lot of his content is relatable and it's real. And so nowadays, corporate brands, they don't want to spend a ton of money doing television commercials, because they can't control who's going to see those commercials. But what they can do is, hey, we can partner with somebody like Spice Adams, who we know has 1 million followers on Instagram. We know the demographics of his followers. Let's do a partnership with him to where he creates video content that's going to be seen and exposed by his audience, who we are trying to attract to. Prime example, and what coach is talking about is, so one of the corporate brands who I represent, which is Kellogg's, and Kellogg's makes Cheez-It, Pringles, and obviously the cereals. They wanted to do a partnership with Spice. And so they hired me in order to negotiate the deal on their behalf. Because number one, they don't have the access to get to a Spice Adams. And then number two, they don't know the proper lingo or language to negotiate a deal with his agent. And so I negotiated the deal. So if you go, and I think he actually posted today, if you go to Spice Adams' Instagram account, you will see an advertisement on there from Cheez-It. And honestly, and I can't tell you, what his compensation is, but because of his video content and his following, he's making more money than some people make annually in their salary, just from a video post. So I say that in a sense to where, even at you guys' ages now, be creative, because what a lot of brands and a lot of people are trying to target people like yourself, because a lot of people are no longer watching television anymore. They're doing everything digitally. And so you guys have the ability to have an impact now. Just be able to create content from whatever you're doing. It could be if you guys are going on a trip to Cooperstown or whatever, do a diary on that. If you guys are going to a Royals game, do a diary on that. If you guys are just focusing on, practicing on certain things, don't be afraid to think that, hey, nobody's going to want to focus on my content, because there's always going to be somebody out there that wants to see it. And also too, the advantage is if you post something on YouTube, it's not just people locally or nationally that's going to see it. It's people all across the world that's going to see it. So content, video content is very critical nowadays, not only in sports and entertainment, but honestly in any type of industry.
What other type of clients do you have now that they may know of, or what? I mean, you have some sports agents that do athletes, some that do coaches. What exactly do you
Right. So you have some sports agents. You have some sports agents that represent athletes. You have some that represent coaches and front office executives. You have others that represent media personalities. Myself, I represent coaches, front office executives, and media personalities. So some of my clients are Frank Vogel, who's the head coach of Los Angeles Lakers that just won the NBA title. Doc Rivers, who's the new head coach at Philadelphia 76ers. Ty Lue, who's the head coach with the Los Angeles Clippers. Lloyd Pierce, who's the head coach for the Atlanta Hawks. Some of the front office executives, David Griffin, who's the president and general manager of the New Orleans Pelicans. We even have some individuals in the WNBA. Derek Fisher, who's the head coach for the LA Sparks. Nikki Collin, who is the head coach for the Atlanta Dream, who was WNBA Coach of the Year 2 years ago. We also represent some sports media personalities such as Ernie Johnson Jr. You guys may not be familiar with his name, but you may know his face. He's the guy who was on the show with Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, and Kenny Smith on TNT. Clark Kellogg, who's the lead anchor, or should I say analyst for CBS Sports. So if you go watch college basketball on CBS on Sunday, you're going to see him. Excuse me, on a Saturday, you're going to see him. Mark Spears, who's the lead NBA writer for ESPN The Undefeated, which is focuses on a lot of their minority content. And then also, even on the local level, Azora Stevenson, who's a young sister who's going to be on the rise. She's actually a reporter for the Milwaukee Bucks. And she's actually, and just give you guys an idea, Zora played basketball at Elon. And she, while she was at Elon, she got a degree in communications and started out as a broadcaster in the newsroom, actually a newsroom broadcaster, but always wanted to be in sports. And so she cultivated that opportunity now to where she's one of the top reporters in the NBA for a team. And Zora is, I want to say maybe 28, 29 years old.
Wow.
And then we also have college coaches. So even your college coaches that you will see, they have agents because all their contracts need to be negotiated. And then we also represent people you will see on the news side that probably your parents are more familiar with on CNN, like the April Ryans, Daryl Forgers on CNN, and also Wesley Lowery for the Washington Post.
We're going to jump into a couple questions and then get back to it. Anybody have any questions immediately? Raise your hand.
Well, actually, can I do one thing? Because I want to make sure you guys engage. Do all y'all have your chat box up? Okay, I'm gonna ask you guys a question. I got a couple of giveaways for you guys. First, I'm gonna give away this Frank Thomas. I don't know if you guys can see it. Frank Thomas Hall of Fame poster. So first question is, who can tell me how many World Series, I see the young man Tyler with the Kansas City Royals flag in the background. How many World Series have the Kansas City Royals won? Okay, it looks like Coach Chris got it first.
that was Isaiah. That was Isaiah.
Isaiah, got it. Let me write this down. Got it.
Isaiah, oh man, okay. It's gonna be some more giveaways, Isaiah.
Yeah, I got two more.
Be able to get it.
Yeah, I got two more. I just want to make sure you guys pay attention. So feel free to. Anybody have any questions?
What's the first question that we have? Go ahead. Go ahead, Quincy. Oh, go ahead, Isaac.
What's the difference between negotiating contracts for coaches and negotiating contracts for players?
That's a great question. There are several differences. There's several differences, and a lot of them even depend upon the sport. Because, and what I mean by that is, some of the players, well, all of the players are a part of a players union that's mandated by the league. The coaches have a coaches union as well, but the criteria is not as strict, and the guidelines are not as strict as it applies to the players. Also, depending on the players, a lot of those guys, depending on where they are in their career, their contracts are different. So, for example, with baseball, football, and essentially basketball, your rookie contract is a slotted contract. And not to get too technical, but what that essentially kind of means is, depending on where you're picked in the draft, where you're selected in the draft, it's already determined what your salary is going to be. And so that kind of just falls in line. Once you get to your second contract after you've reached free agency, that's when you have the flexibility to be able to negotiate a more broader deal. That's why, for example, in the NBA, you see a lot of these players in their second contracts getting these very lucrative contracts because in their rookie deals, it's just a slotted system. So if you know, hey, if I'm the 10th pick in the first round, I know this is going to be my salary. From a coach perspective, a lot of times the coach's contract is just whatever you negotiated. And what I mean by that is it could be a first time rookie head coach to where I can negotiate a 5-year guaranteed deal. It could also be a first time head coach where I can negotiate a 3-year guaranteed deal with a 1-year option year. So there's the flexibility there. Also, too, particularly in say the NBA, also in MLB and NFL, the coaches' contracts are guaranteed. That's not the case, for example, like in football, because in football you have more injuries and things like that. So when I say that in a sense to where, and I've had example of this to where I've had a coach who had a 5-year contract and he got fired in the first year. That team that fired him still owed him 4 more years of his contract because his salary was fully guaranteed, to where you will see a lot of these professional players, particularly like in football and sometimes even baseball in the early in the career, if they get cut, they get cut. They might be owed a little bit of money, but they're not going to be owed the totality of their contract.
What were you talking about? You talking about coaches' contracts. Tell us about Tyronn Lue when he negotiated his big contract and the way he did that.
So with Ty Lue, he's a client, and he was an interesting kind of case study to where he was associate head coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers. During the middle of the season, it was right before All-Star break, the Cleveland Cavaliers decided to let go of their current head coach, and they wanted to elevate Ty Lue to become their next head coach. Usually in that situation, you will renegotiate that person's contract to basically be on the same standards as the other head coaches throughout the NBA. Because at first he was assistant coach, and now you transition. He got a promotion essentially. So of course now you want to get market value for him. Obviously, time is of the essence with these kind of deals because literally they played on a nationally televised game on ESPN. Say I think it was on a Wednesday. They fired the head coach on a Thursday, and Ty Lue was introduced as their head coach that Friday morning. And so one of the things that we couldn't necessarily agree upon that quickly was what would be Ty Lue's new salary. We couldn't agree that quickly with the Cleveland Cavaliers, because what they were trying to do was they were going to give him an increase in his salary, but we didn't feel like it was of market value for a person with his experience, even though he's never been a head coach before. And so what Ty did, which was remarkable on his behalf, is he betted on himself. And what I mean by that is he basically said, hey, we'll just negotiate the contract at the end of the year and just keep paying me my current salary, which a lot of people thought he was crazy for doing so. And even the Cavaliers thought they were basically essentially getting over on him because he was saving them a ton of money. So long story short, which you guys probably are aware of, Ty goes on to win the NBA Finals, to where now it's a completely different discussion, because as soon as he won the NBA Finals, of course, Cleveland wanted to give us the same offer that they originally had beforehand, which we was like, no. Now Ty has done something at the time I think only 4 head coaches had done that were current head coaches in the league. So of course, now we're comparing him to those 4 head coaches' salary as opposed to the other coaches in the NBA. So essentially, because he was willing to bet on himself, I mean, he got a huge considerable raise. I mean, he essentially got it's open record now, but he got a contract that was 5 years, $35 million. So he's basically making $7 million a year. And this is a person who is younger than both me and Coach Chris.
So what were they trying to offer him had he accepted the initial agreement?
They initially was trying to offer him 3 years, $9 million. So basically $3 million a year.
Wow. So he ended up getting $4 more million a year.
He ultimately guaranteed himself $35 million as opposed to $9 million.
Wow.
And that type of impact is that will change. That's generational wealth, what we'll call, because that type of money will change, your kids, your family, everything.
So what's the sports agent role in somebody like Patrick Mahomes, who goes from virtually being a college student to owning the Royals in a couple years, or in a percentage of a major sports team? What is a sports agent? How do you help your athletes or your clients with that transition?
That's a great question, because I would say that most people don't realize the minimum amount of time that you spend, in my opinion, as a sports agent with your client is discussing their contract. Because a lot of my clients, I would say majority of my clients, I would say I have a friendship with, as opposed to just a business partnership with, because being personable and building a relationship with somebody is very key, because a lot of times you're talking to them about everyday life, everyday pressures, as opposed to their contract. So an example with Patrick Mahomes, I imagine his agent spends majority of the time just talking to him about just everyday life, because I know that he's an expected father. I think he is engaged to be married. A lot of times in those circumstances, you're helping him with everything from how do you prepare to be a father? How do you, what is needed to prepare for your wedding? What are different things that can help make, what we always say is how can we take as much off your plate to help you do the job and focus on your job the best that you possibly can. So everything from, I'm sure he's probably bought like a new house or whatever. An agent will be involved with that. Not necessarily negotiating it, but just more so shielding him from certain things, directing him to certain individuals, kind of weeding out the process. Everything from even youth organizations that he partners with. I know that he started a new foundation. So a lot of times an agent will help their clients with establishing a foundation, because there's a lot of legal work that has to go behind that as well. And then obviously, there are things that come in regards to an endorsement. I know he's a huge endorser for Adidas, different things like that, to where all that is a part of a role for an agent too. So it's everything from the business aspect, but quite honestly, majority of my time is spent talking to clients on a personal level. And it's everything, like I said, from what they have going on in their families, because a lot of people don't realize they are human and normal, just like how we are. And what I say is they have the same issues. And a lot of times they have more issues because as Biggie says, more money, more problems that we're not accustomed to. So a lot of times they just need somebody, an outlet to talk to for somebody who really knows who they are.
As a fan of sports, and then I'm gonna let the kids ask some more questions. As a fan of sports, do you get to go to NBA All-Star games and Super Bowls and World Series because this is part of your job, or what's some of the fun things that you get to do?
That's a great question. That's one of the things that I'm missing tremendously because of this pandemic, is being unable to travel. I would say in normal cases, I'm probably on the road 2 or 3 weeks out of the month. And that's going to clients' games, business conferences, business meetings, things like that. And so the clients' games could be anything from, like, for example, the NBA season starts, I think it's tomorrow or Wednesday. Normally, I would be on the road at somebody's game. I would always be at All-Star Weekend. All-Star Weekend, for example, with NBA is extremely busy, particularly if you have a client that is coaching in it, and we always have a client that's working it from a media standpoint. So a lot of people think, okay, you going to like all the parties and the cool events and things like that. But a lot of it and majority of it is from a business perspective. So you're always on, as I say, meaning that you're always networking, you're always working, you're negotiating deals. The time has gone by where you just sit in the office and be able to be effective from a business standpoint. Nowadays, you have to be out and about, or we do a lot of this now with virtual communication, because that's just what is required. I think Coach told me you guys even went to Cooperstown, for example. John Smoltz is one of our clients who was inducted into the Hall of Fame, Baseball Hall of Fame. So a lot of times we would have to go to Cooperstown even during his induction, but even afterwards, because as you guys know, they have a big fan fest experience where they do autograph signings and things like that, to where we negotiate that, or I negotiate that on his behalf, to where he gets paid to sign those autographs that people are paying for. So I've been to, and a lot of it is, trust me, I'm definitely grateful for the opportunity. And until I'm asked questions like this, I don't really realize how fortunate I've been. I've been to Final Fours, NBA Finals, World Series, All-Star games, both MLB. I've been to Pro Bowl, been to NBA All-Star games. There's only a few bucket list events that I haven't been afforded to go to, but I'm always grateful in regards to where I can go. And then, and I know Coach has talked to you guys about it. I always make sure to I'm paying attention to how I carry myself, because you're always being looked at, no matter if you're in a hotel lobby, or if you're in a business conference room, or at a game, somebody is looking at you. And it's always more important to be, I would say, overdressed and almost too corporate, as opposed to being underdressed and too lackadaisical, because I've seen people who have lost their career just because they're not speaking appropriately. They're not acting a certain way around certain individuals who you don't know are key decision makers.
As a you from North Carolina, correct?
Correct. Charlotte.
From Charlotte. Does the agent have anything to do with the way Cam Newton dresses?
No, at the end of the day, and that's another great question, because a lot of people feel like the agent's role is the player's mother or father, which is not the case. Now, the agent can have some input in regards to, hey, suggest like you may not want to dress this way, or you may want to dress this way, depending on what you're doing. But some people are just going to be them and who they are. Now, for a person like Cam Newton, some of it has some of his advantages, because I know for a fact when he was in Charlotte for the Carolina Panthers, because of the way he dressed, he was able to create his own clothing line that was exclusively sold at Dillard's because of that. Wow. Also, too, is he gets paid to wear those hats that he's wearing. And so you have to look at it from that perspective as well, to where a lot of these individuals, whether it's the James Hardens, the Russell Westbrooks, a lot of them are viewed as walking billboards. So they get paid for the things that they are wearing. And what a lot of players are doing because of that, particularly becoming more business savvy, like, for example, Jimmy Butler, who he started his own coffee brand, is he knew that when they were playing in the bubble, whenever he was walking from the bus into the locker room, ESPN was going to be filming. So what did he start doing? He just started wearing a t-shirt that just had his coffee brand on it. And so wow. that kind of goes back to how I said, you know, creating your own content and understanding that you guys are walking billboards. For example, like the cool ass hats that you guys are wearing. When y'all wear those around town, when y'all go on the road, things like that, people want to know, you know, what is that representing? You guys are walking billboards. And so carry yourself accordingly, knowing that you're being watched and people are looking at you.
we got time for another question or quiz or raffle giveaway. So
All right,
everybody get ready, get close to your keyboards.
Yeah.
First one that pops up is gonna be the winner.
Okay, this is actually I mentioned you guys, we represent John Smoltz, who's inducted into the Hall of Fame. This is actually an exclusive poster. Only 300 of these were made that he signed. And so I got another baseball question. And this was kind of tricky. And I'll go ahead and give you the answer. Let me ask you the question first. How many Black managers are there currently in Major League Baseball? And I'll give you a hint that one of them is mixed. He's biracial. Okay, Marcus. Where's Marcus at? He got it right.
I'm here.
Marcus, do you know who they are?
Was one of them from the Dodgers?
Yep.
And
Dave Roberts.
Was the other one the Nationals?
Actually, that was close. Dusty. I think you're talking about Dusty Baker. He used to be with the Nationals, and now he's with the Houston Astros.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yep. So I'll make sure you get that.
Who has the next question? What questions you have, Marcus?
I was gonna ask like if there's any like perks on being on the agent side of the sports industry rather than being like more on the athlete side.
Yeah, actually, I mean, a lot of that's a great question too, because like I said, when I first got to college, and when I was in high school and college, I was always focused on being a player agent. And once I graduated from high school, and I probably should have gave you this backstory. Once I graduated from high school, I didn't have any opportunities to get into the sports business just because of, quite honestly, I didn't do a good enough job to position myself while I was in college for internships and things like that. So I started working in the corporate world initially with IBM, but always with the mindset that I wanted to get into sports. So a friend of mine, she actually went to Clark Atlanta University, which is next to Morehouse. And through her, I was able to get an internship at the sports agency, which I actually work at.
We got a couple coaches that went to Clark, coach. So they trying to inject like, we had to go through them to get there and all that.
Of course. And so
We know the truth. We know the truth.
And so what I did was my internship, it was actually for a guy by the name of Todd France, who he's considered probably the top or one of the top agents in the NFL right now. And I was his intern. And once I got the opportunity to intern for him, I essentially got what I call a behind the curtain view of everything that goes on in a sports agent's life for a player. And at the time, I just realized that wasn't a role that I wanted to do. It wasn't. Now I was able to kind of see behind the curtains, behind the closed doors, what all goes on. That wasn't something that I wanted to do. But through my internship, I was able to get exposed to, hey, coaches and front office executives, they also have agents as well, which I didn't know at the time. And because I was recruited, when I was recruited out of high school and things like that, a lot of the individuals who either recruited me, coaches who recruited me, or even some guys I played against, they were getting into coaching. And so the reason why I bring all that, kind of fast forward to answer your question, Marcus, is a lot of coaches and front office executives, they've been through the player phase. And a lot of times what you would see is players are usually between, you would say, even now as young as 18 years old, professional players, 18 years old to probably 30, to a certain example. A lot of times in that time frame, you are thinking at best, maybe a year ahead of your life, maybe at best. And I'm guilty of it. When I was that young, I wasn't necessarily thinking about what's going to happen 5 years from now. But with a lot of coaches that we work with, they're not really getting into the business until like their 30s or older. So a lot of the guys who I mentioned, they're in their 40s, 50s, and some even 60s. And so a lot of times they're thinking 5, 6, 7 years down the line with this contract. So like, for example, I said with Ty Lue, we negotiated a 5-year deal for him. He was thinking, you know, with this contract, how much am I going to make on the back end of this contract before I make on the front end, where most players don't think that way. And so just my personality, I work better with people who are more forward thinking, more futuristic thinking, kind of a big picture type thought as opposed to current players. That's a great question, Mark.
Because you mentioned like our kids, Black kids that have played sports, why they would make good employees for a sports agent because of their relatability and things like that. Why are they primed to be good at this business? What would make them?
I would say relatability, perseverance, competitiveness, and always being viewed as an underdog. And what I mean by that is, like I said, I got an internship at the agency where I worked. At the time, I was one of 6 interns. All the interns were white. And so my parents always instilled in me that you have to work twice as hard to be considered half as good. And I'll repeat that. You have to work twice as hard to be considered half as good. And so what I mean by that is when I interned, I had the mindset as like I was playing sports. Nobody was going to outwork me. I knew that all the other kids at the time who was there, I was interning with, they were all there based on relationships of who they knew. Their father was this CEO, this vice president, whatever it may be. They didn't know my dad. They didn't know anybody. And when I say that, I didn't have a parent or some type of business connection. I just had to go in there, excuse my French, I just had to go in there and work my ass off. And so I just knew nobody was going to beat me. And so I interned there and I was always dressed accordingly. I spent majority of my money on my clothes because at the time we was dressing business casual. And so I knew that I had to outdress all the other interns because the majority of the interns, they were just there because they needed something to do for the summer. But I knew I wanted to be there in order to make this a career. And so what ended up happening, I interned and that ended up developing into a paid internship that lasted for 2 years. And I was actually a contract employee, what they call a contract employee. So after 2 years, that transitioned into a full-time position. So just to give you guys an idea, at the time frame, we had a total of, I think, 25 employees at the time frame. There was only 3, including myself, Black people who worked at the firm, at the agency. Now we have 200 employees. Even though I've been there for 15 years, I still have the mindset that I have to work twice as hard to just be considered half as good. A prime example is, like I said, we have 200 employees. I'm the only Black male vice president at the agency. I'm one of the only ones who represent coaches and front office executives in the industry, period. And a lot of what I've learned and a lot of what I take away is the mindset that I've carried from sports. And a lot of that is, particularly one thing is like how you guys get along with your teammates. You got to use that to get along with people. One of the biggest keys in being an agent, working in the sports world, and really working in any industry, is being able to connect with people, being able to relate to people, being able to cultivate relationships and connections. And then also being able to adapt. With this whole pandemic now that we're working from home and things like that, how do you deal with adversity? How do you guys deal with being down 3 runs in the 9th inning? And so a lot of that mindset that you have as athletes and as just Black boys, a lot of your counterparts don't know that. A lot of those consider certain things as struggles that it's everyday life for us. And what I mean by that is Chris knows this, and I'm sure even some of the other coaches who went to Clark, when we had to go to college, if you wanted a phone, you had to call Bell South and get your phone hooked up in your dorm. Where the interns I went with that was at University of Georgia, they already had phones in their dorm rooms. And so I say that in a sense to where you had to create, you are at Morehouse, it cultivated us to be resourceful on our own. If we needed to go get classes, we had to go to the registration office and cultivate a relationship with some of the women and some of the men in the registration office to get our classes. We couldn't do it over the phone on the computer like some of our white counterparts were able to do at the bigger schools. And so because of that, I had the problem solving, because that's the huge thing now, not only in sports, but any industry, is how do you problem solve? How do you problem solve? How do you game plan? And a lot of that is just coming from what you naturally have learned in sports and what you naturally go through in life.
Good deal, good deal. I didn't realize you were a VP, man. You the man. You the man.
Nah, man. Just trying to keep up with you. Just trying to keep up with you.
Who else? Caleb, what question you have, Caleb?
What was your backup plan just in case being a sports agent didn't work out?
It's a great question. My backup plan was just to work on the corporate side in management, and actually I wanted to. I had an interest in working in like banking and things like that. But quite honestly, I put all my heart and my desire into figuring out a way to work in sports. It was one of those things where if I get a crack, I'm going to kick the door in, and then not only going to kick the door in, I'm going to find a way. And what I mean by that, and kind of taking another step back, is like when I said I first started my my internship, and when I first got hired, I didn't first get hired in an agent role, because an agent role, you're never going to see a job posted online saying, "Hey, we're looking for an agent," because a lot of times an agency is going to hire somebody who's already an agent or somebody that can bring clients with them. So I say that in the sense to where when I first got my job, I worked on the corporate marketing side of sports. So I was essentially helping brands do all of their planning, so the corporate sponsorships and things like that. But I always had the mindset that I wanted to utilize that to basically get in the other hallway on the talent side, on the talent representation side. So I just always put my focus in on and my desire on working in sports, but I did have a brief backup plan to kind of work in banking on the management side.
Quincy Jones, what's your question, sir?
Who is your favorite person to work with when you're doing that?
My favorite person to work with? Man, you're gonna get me in trouble. Of course, I'm supposed to say all of them. Probably one of the most favorite people I've been around working with, I would say, is Shaquille O'Neal. The reason why I would say Shaq is because Shaq is who he is, whether it fits in front of the camera or behind closed doors. And what you will find out is a lot of times in this business, your favorite athlete or your favorite individual that you see on TV, that's not how they are in private. Where Shaq's the kind of person to where if he walks into a room, he's going to introduce himself to everybody, and he's going to treat everybody as if they don't know who he is, when the reason everybody is there is because of who he is. But he's going to make everybody feel like they have some type of connection with him. I've been to production sessions where Shaq might pick out a kid and say, "Hey, give me your contact information. I'm going to send you this, or I'm going to do that." Like his personality is as genuine as it gets on as you see on TV. And in my opinion, that's one of the most refreshing aspects about the job, is when you see somebody who they are private, the same as they in public.
Jay Carter, what you got for us? What's your question? Jay Carter.
Who's the biggest name or like most successful like person that you've worked, like one of your clients or athletes?
That's a tough question, because the reason why I say that is success can be measured differently by different individuals. And what I mean by that is some individuals, success to them is, hey, I want to be a head coach in the NBA or the NFL. Some individuals is, I just want to be a college coach on any level. I have some clients who they want to be a college coach at HBCU. That's success for them. So honestly, success for me is seeing that my client is happy with where their careers are. Because with my clients, I'm always looking for a long-term relationship with them. I'm not looking for a short-term relationship. What's the first contract that we can do and then kind of be out of it? A lot of them, I'm with them for their entire career. And so success for them could be measured in different ways. A prime example is one of my clients is George Lynch. You guys would know who George Lynch, but some of the adults in here probably will. George Lynch played at the University of North Carolina. He was a great athlete, McDonald's All-American coming out of Virginia. He played at University of North Carolina and played several years in the NBA. George coached in the NBA G League, coached in the NBA as well. And George always wanted the opportunity of being a college head coach. And George got that opportunity to be the head coach at Clark Atlanta. And George had absolutely no experience whatsoever as it relates to HBCUs. Like, he was never recruited by him. He never went to HBCU school. His family, nobody went to HBCU school, anything like that. And so George ended up stepping in the position at Clark Atlanta. And of all of his experiences, if you talk to George, all of his experiences, his experience being at Clark and working at HBCU was the best experience of his career as a player and as a coach. And so to me, success is that, because one of the things that George was able to witness by being a head coach was, guess what? There's not much difference between a basketball player at Clark versus a basketball player in the Sun Belt Conference or the ACC. A lot of times the only difference is either their size or the opportunity that's given. And one of the things that he noticed was HBCUs are just not given even the financial resources and certain key resources to sustain success. And so because of that, because of his influence, his celebrity and things like that, he did some great things in regards to fundraising and bringing attention not only to Clark Atlanta, but what he's done is he's expanded that to where he's created now this huge foundation that's doing great things, where all of the money is going to support HBCU schools. He actually just did a huge event on Twitch this past weekend with NBA 2K, to where he partnered with selected HBCU schools, and they had students where they just did essentially a NBA 2K tournament. And they had sponsors, corporate sponsors and things like that, and the money went to the schools for scholarships.
Wow.
So
How big of an impact do you think Deion Sanders going to Jackson State is going to be?
it's a huge impact. He's already impacted without even coaching the game. And so what I say by that is, how many pounds have Jackson State been on ESPN or CNN or CBS or Fox Sports before Deion Sanders got there? That's number one. Number two, they just signed a huge deal, apparel deal with Under Armour. Deion Sanders brought that there. That's going to support the program. Number three is, now, even if you look at from a recruiting aspect, is high school kids and even some college kids that are transferring, now they are considering HBCU schools, because what you will see, the coaching staff that Deion has put together, those guys have just as much experience as the coaching staff at a Florida State or Georgia or Ohio State or Missouri. And so what Dion actually posted this, I want to say it was last week or 2 weeks on his Instagram, is if you have aspirations of playing in the NFL, what coach, general manager, and owner do you think that Deion Sanders cannot get in touch with in the NFL? I mean, just think about that. Because at the end of the day, whether if you play baseball, basketball, football, if you play at an elite level, there are scouts that are paid to go find you no matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're at the #1 ranked school in the country or if you're at a Division II or a Division III school, they're going to find you. And so a lot of times when a person like a Dion and those other individuals, you just need the exposure. And I think that's one, me and Coach Chris talked about this. That's one of the biggest issues I think that Black kids, you guys' age, is just a lack of exposure. And with individuals like Dion, every team is going to be at their practices. Every team is going to be at their games because of Deion Sanders. He's also going to play some of the bigger teams, which is going to be a revenue generator for Jackson State. So acquiring him was a huge deal. And I think a lot of HBCU schools need to do it. It's the same impact that George Lynch had at Clark Atlanta. Because
if I'm not mistaken, you played for a Super Bowl MVP, didn't you?
exactly, Doug Williams, who's vice president of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. And because we had Doug Williams, we got an Adidas deal. Before that, the school was just basically buying gear from Russell and Nike. But now when Doug Williams became our head coach, we were getting all this gear from Adidas. So that's
Coach Darnell, y'all have some questions? Feel like you're trying to say something, Darnell.
I got one, Coach, and Mr. Bobby. Which industry across the major sports or even the NCAA is it probably, which one's tougher to kind of negotiate in, and probably which one is a little bit more easier?
Say that one more time. Say it one more time.
No problem.
I didn't kick the back end.
Across the across the 3 major sports, MLB, NFL, NBA, and you can throw in the NCAA as well, since you guys represent some NCAA clients. Which of those are kind of the toughest to negotiate in, and which one of those would probably be the easier one to negotiate in?
I would say the NCAA is the toughest. And the reason why I say the NCAA is the toughest is because you have a combination of state-supported schools and private schools. And the difference is the approval process and the negotiation process is a lot different, whether if it's a state school and depending on what state it's in versus a private school, where a private school can essentially do whatever they want to do, however they want to do it. And so I give you a prime example. In the state of Texas. In the state of Texas, if you work at a state-supported school, so that's a public school. So that's anywhere from like the University of Texas to Prairie View A&M, to where you can negotiate the contracts with the athletic directors, but the contract has to get approved by the board of trustees, which meets every quarter. So they only meet 4 times a year. So I can negotiate a contract with the athletic director, say in January. It's not going to officially get approved until March or so. And then what they do they will, not to get too convoluted, but they will retro pay that individual up to there once it gets approved. Where at a private school, it allows you to be a little bit more creative, because there's no really, to a certain extent, there's no regulations. But a lot of times too, though, is you also have to keep it within mind that this is an educational institution. So it's in the mindset of, hey, I'm asking for a certain amount of salary, I'm asking for a certain amount of incentives and things like that. And so what the athletic directors in the grand scheme of things was trying to say, we also have to keep in mindset that, okay, if I'm paying this coach X amount of money, you know, why can't the school also pay the science department this amount of money to go for scholarships or to go for research or things like that? On the flip side, I would say NBA is probably the easiest because that's everything's private. Every team has its own owner. You can negotiate a contract whenever you want to. It could be in the middle of the year. It could be at the end of the year. It could be at any time, which is it's a good thing, and it's also a bad thing too. Like I literally had a client who's now with the Detroit Pistons who they actually had an assistant coach job open up a week before training camp started, and he got a call. So that was kind of a good thing. But then also too, they can fire your client anytime they want to. Now, like I said, one of the positives about it is these guys' contracts are guaranteed, but nobody likes to get fired. But I say it in a sense to where the NBA is the easiest because you can do it at any time, and usually you kind of have a framework. And one of the other differences between the NBA and college, there's only 30 NBA teams. Where in college, particularly like on the basketball side, there's over 300 Division I programs. So I can pretty much have access to any general manager and a relationship with any general manager in the NBA, as opposed to there's no way possible I can know any athletic director in college.
We got
I have a
time.
question.
I got a couple.
Go ahead. I'm here.
You got a
How
question, Isaac? Go ahead.
how accomplished do you have to be as a player to make it as a coach?
That's good. Actually, you don't. I'll give you a prime example. I told you one of my clients is Frank Vogel, who's the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Most people don't realize this. Frank Vogel didn't play basketball past high school. He did not play in college. He actually went to college with the mindset of wanting to be a head coach. So he went to the University of Kentucky and was actually a manager for their basketball program his entire 4 years there. If you look and research the background of a lot of your favorite coaches, prime example, where did Andy Reid go to college at? How successful of a college player was Andy Reid? He's a hell of a football coach. He's one of the best in the NFL. So if you look at a lot of the coaches, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, you will see a lot of them weren't necessarily exceptional players. And quite honestly, if you look at historically, a lot of the exceptional players who tried to coach had a tough time doing it because a lot of times they have tough times teaching certain things that came to them so naturally that they don't understand why it doesn't come naturally to other people. A lot of people don't realize Magic Johnson was a coach for the Los Angeles Lakers and he was horrible. So you don't necessarily have to be an exceptional player to be an exceptional coach.
Look at Coach Chris.
There you go.
Go ahead, Coach Darnell.
I got a question for you, Mr. Bobby. What would you tell yourself when you were either between the ages of these guys, 13 or 15? What should they be focusing on now to be in a position to where you are today? What would you go back and tell yourself as a teenager? What are some of the things they should be paying attention to and focusing on?
That's a deep one. One of the things I would focus on is being the best version of yourself. And don't try to be somebody else. Be the best version of yourself. Be who you are. Focus on who you want to be and how you can perfect yourself in being that. Also, listen more than you talk. It's all right to not know everything, because I figured that obviously, coming up as a teenager, things like that, I knew everything. Where it's okay not to know everything because people don't expect for you to know everything, and to listen more than you talk, because even in my business right now, I have to be a key listener in order to pay attention to what's going on. So listen more than you talk. Be the best version of yourself, and don't put yourself in a box. Be open to trying new things. Dare to be different. And I know that sounds kind of cliche, but dare to be different. Try new things. Don't be afraid to think that you have to be cool. Because nowadays, to me, not being cool is the cool. Because what a lot of people now are looking for is, who are these individuals that are diverse? And like, one of the things, like, I never played like a music instrument, for example. That's one of the things I regret never doing, because I didn't think it was cool playing in the band. You know, I didn't branch out and try different things. If it wasn't baseball, football, and basketball, I wasn't paying attention to it. Which obviously those things have helped me to where I've gone to be, or where I am in my journey. But don't be afraid to branch out and learn new things. One of the biggest things that I need to learn how to do is I need to learn how to play golf. A lot of business deals are done on the golf course. I've never played golf before. I need to try to learn how to play golf. So always try to branch out to do different things, and don't try to be cool like what your perception is of everybody else, and don't care about what people perceive of you. Be yourself.
That's real there. That's real. Did you have any more raffles to give away? We probably only got about 5 more minutes.
Yeah, I got one more. This is for this is gonna be basketball related.
Get close to your computers. I don't want to hear no excuses.
So I got this, and I don't know if you guys can see it. I got this exclusive print. This was actually only 50 of these were produced, and it's actually hand signed by, I don't know if you can see it, by Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal.
Wow.
So this
I
is
like that Bo Jackson in the background too, by the way.
Yeah, that's my pride and joy right there.
Okay.
All right, this one is who was the first black head coach to win an NBA title in their rookie season? So who was the first black head coach to win a title in his first year coaching? Joseph Carter is the man. He got it. Joseph, who is it?
Tyler.
Absolutely. My guy, Tyler.
Good job. Hey, Jay Carter, he's gonna ship it to me, but you gotta pay me $100 for me to bring it to you because of the pandemic.
He's smooth. He look like he got it. He's smooth. He look like he got it. I like the way he wears his hat.
Don't tell him that, Coach. Don't tell him that. It go to his head.
Well, let me ask you guys some questions. I'll just throw it out there. Elijah, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Which one?
You.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see the one with the headphones on.
Elijah Lynch.
Oh, me. An MLB player.
Got it. What do you think you have to do in order to get there?
Practice a lot.
Do you think the only things you have to work on is on the field stuff, or do you think there's anything off the field you need to work on?
Off the field too.
Like what?
Like controlling your anger and stuff.
Very true. Have you ever interviewed yourself?
No.
Do that sometime. Do a mock interview, you know, in the in front of the mirror. What position you play?
Shortstop.
Hey, you know, interview yourself. If you know, ball hit it short, make the game winning out. You're on ESPN, they interview you, you know, before you get in the locker room. You know, those are things you have to prepare yourself, because a lot of professional athletes, particularly when they're coming up, and that's one of the things too that are a role of an agent is, you know, helping these guys learn how to deal with the media and how to talk to the media. So you know, focus on different things like that. And so there's another, I know it's another Elijah and Jaden. What do you guys want to be when y'all grow up?
I would probably have to do something that deals in sports, most likely.
Any type of passions, like in sports or outside of sports that may can tie into sports that you may not even worry about? What other passions do you have besides sports?
What else you like to do? See,
I mean, I like play video games maybe, or
Prime example, and I'll show you the reason why I asked you this, and it's no wrong answer, but this to show you the connection with sports and video games, where some of my clients' biggest endorsement deals are in the video gaming space. That's a huge industry that's exploding both in sports and entertainment, but then also even on the corporate side, to where now we have, and I told you, like some of my coworkers are engineers, programmers, have degrees in IT and things like that, because what they're doing is they're creating apps, they're creating virtual reality, they're creating video games and things like that, to where now you can utilize your interest in sports and your interest in video games. So now you can create video games, or you can create some of the digital content that you will see at a professional game. So just think about some of the things you will see on a video board, some of the things you will see on a scoreboard, at the scores table, some of the graphics you even see when watching a baseball game or a football game or things like that. People had to program those. People had to create those. So I say it in a sense to where don't be afraid to think, okay, you know, I don't want to work in the traditional sports world where I can't, to where now you can take your interest in video games. So you can go to school and major in, you know, engineering or IT and things like that, and utilize that to get into sports. Because guess what? There's not a lot of people in the industry that look like you and me who are doing that.
Do you think that there's an interest in hiring more blacks in your industry?
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the biggest areas that's increasing because of everything with social justice and social injustice and things like that. One of the biggest industries is diversity and inclusion. And so, of course, they are looking for a lot of minorities to hire in that role, because whether if it's a professional team, athletic department, agencies, whatever it may be, a lot of people now are hiring people in the space of diversity and inclusion. Same thing in athletics, and this is another thing. Previous coach asked me if there's things that I would change, kind of going back. Is I didn't know, like when I was in Morehouse, I didn't know that the whole aspect of working in athletic administration. I didn't understand that piece and didn't really focus on it. There's a huge industry for Black men and women to work in athletics. And so what I mean by that is being an athletic director is just like being a CEO of your own company. And there's a huge opportunity for us to make an impact there. Because a lot of people ask me, why don't we see a lot of Black coaches, head coaches in certain positions? Because they're not Black people in the position to hire them. And I never thought about it that way until I started working in the agency space, to now when I'm picking up the phone calling the athletic director trying to get my client an interview to get the head coach position, I'm talking to either more time than not, I'm talking to a white male. And so there are a large amount of roles that the industry is looking for Black men and women, because quite honestly, and I'm always going to be honest, we're built different. We know how to problem solve. We know how to work through adversity. A lot of things that people see as challenges is everyday life for us. And this is just honestly a cool time for us, because now people are really paying attention to the lack of diversity that's going on within the industry.
You got some more questions for the players?
I don't see his face, but I'll ask Gavin. Gavin, are you there?
Yes.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
An MLB player.
What position do you play?
Center field.
Who's your favorite player?
Probably Mookie Betts.
And do you only follow Mookie Betts when he plays, or do you really research his background in regards to how he became who he is?
Or just watch him when he plays.
One of the things I would challenge you is to learn more of how Mookie Betts became Mookie Betts. And what I mean by that is, obviously, he just didn't all of a sudden just become this phenomenal player. Learn his background of how he got there. It's good to have role models, but I would always challenge guys to learn more about your role model as opposed to what you just see on television. Particularly nowadays, you guys are fortunate because a lot of these individuals will allow you kind of in their personal lives a little bit from a social media standpoint. But, see if Mookie Betts has a foundation. And what does his foundation focus on? A lot of times what you're going to see is guys' foundations is focused on areas that they didn't have in their life, and things like that. So if you want to be the next Mookie Betts, and what I would challenge you is to be the best Gavin Nash there can be, but see how Mookie got to where he is.
Okay.
Thank you, Coach. We got time for one more question. Either you can ask it or the players
I'll
can
let
ask
somebody
it.
else
And we're
ask.
gonna check out.
I have a question.
Okay.
So how much do sports agents get when they're working with a player?
With the player, that's a great question. So in majority of the leagues, you can get a maximum of 3% of the player's contract. And what I say is a maximum of 3% because it can be as low as 1% or a half percent. And so what a lot of times with if a player is savvy enough, some of the elite players like a Mookie Betts, for example, he's going to negotiate with his agent is that, hey, you can negotiate my contract, but I'm only going to sign with you if you agree to 1% of my deal as opposed to 3% of my deal. An agent's going to agree to it regardless because 1% of something, which in his case is hundreds of millions of dollars, is better than 0%. Also, too, you have to realize that that's just on the contract negotiation side for his employment, meaning with his team. There's also money to be made on the marketing side. And that's where you see like the endorsements. So with the LeBron James and Nike, Cam Newton and Under Armour. I think Mookie Betts has a deal with Brand Jordan, I believe. With those deals, you get anywhere between, it's usually 15 to 20% of the value of that. And so that's how agents are paid from that. And you also get a portion of their bonus money. So for example, if a player makes it to the playoffs, you negotiate that they're going to get X amount of bonus money. And it usually increases every round that they advance to. And the agent is also gets a portion of that as well.
Bobby, in conclusion, man, I can't thank you enough for taking this time to spend with them. And hopefully you planted some seeds and we'll have some sports agents or some people with some sports careers just based on this conversation. I know when I was their age, I had no idea that this type of thing existed. And as you mentioned, exposure is extremely, extremely valuable. And that's what we really want to do with the Kings is expose them not only to the game of baseball, the game of life, but, future paths and expose them to Black men that are doing things that, that are achievable and that they can see themselves doing. It makes a lot more sense when they see someone that looks like them, that talks like them, that wears a hoodie like them, or goes to a school they may aspire to go to. has Bo Jackson and they like Bo Jackson. So just being able to connect those dots is super huge. And I thank you. Can't thank you
I
enough for
appreciate.
taking the time to do it.
No, I'm equally even more appreciative and honored of being able to speak to you guys and just the things that you're doing. I was about to call you CeeLo. The things that you're doing, Chris, is phenomenal because we didn't have opportunities like this growing up. So I challenge all you guys to take advantage of it. And then one thing I wanted to show you guys kind of in closing, my mom actually gave this to me when I was in high school, and I've taken it. I took it to me in my dorm room at Morehouse. I also had it in my office. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I'll read it to you. It says, "Reputation is made in a moment. Character is built in a lifetime." And so I'll just repeat this again: is reputation is made in a moment. Character is built in a lifetime. And I know I said this before, is no matter if you 13, 14, 15, or over 40, always be mindful of how you carry yourself. And as Black men, Black boys, carry yourself with high character and high self-esteem, to where whether if you're in your house, respect your guardians, your coaches, things like that. But even outside, where you are carrying the pride of your name, your family name, things like that, always do it with a high character and always focus on being a high character person. And so if you're a high character person, I'm a firm believer that no matter what industry you are in, whether if you are a GM of a professional team, or if you are the head custodian at the baseball park, you're going to be successful. So just always maintain a high character about yourself.
Greatly appreciate it. Coaches, y'all got any lasting words?
I appreciate Mr. Bobby for hanging out with the boys and giving them some wisdom. And whenever you make it to KC, man, we got that first round of golf on us.
Oh, I got you. I need it.
Hey, you got it.
And I need some swag too, man. Chris, we gotta talk about that.
Oh, we got you.
I need to represent down here in Atlanta. For sure.
I got one personal request, Mr. Bobby.
Got you.
How can I get Louis Riddick to be the GM of the Bears this offseason?
Actually, I need Louis Riddick to be the GM of the Atlanta Falcons. I want him to be the GM for Atlanta Falcons ASAP.
Yeah.
They need him in Atlanta. In all seriousness, it's a shame that he's not a GM for somebody right now, and it'll be even a bigger shame after this hiring season if he's still not a GM.
100% agree with you.
Absolutely. But I'd rather for him to be here with the Falcons as opposed to the Bears. I'm selfish with that.
Well, that sounds good.
You guys thoroughly.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Just send me your hat size and we'll take care of you.
I got you. I appreciate that, fellas.
Most definitely, and definitely look us up next time you're here for basketball, man.
Oh, without a doubt, 100%. And y'all keep me posted on y'all success too.
Oh, most definitely.
Absolutely.
Have a good one, man. Appreciate it.
All right.